Larry is a 480 Macedon locomotive that works on the Southern United Railroad. He works really hard and tries his best to please all the railroad management, but sometimes he could go a little bit too far. One day, Larry arrived at the rock quarry. Jessica and Jerelyn had just arranged a long train of stone to be taken to the seaport. "There you go, Larry," said Jerelyn cheerfully. "Thank you," replied Larry. Jessica looked concerned. "Larry, that train looks pretty heavy. Are you sure you can handle it?" "Sure, I'm sure," Larry said confidently. As soon as the conductor was ready, Larry departed the quarry. Larry's driver was concerned too. "I think we should double Piscataway Hill," he said to the fireman. "Nonsense," grumbled Larry. "That'll make us late, and Mr. Egan will be very cross with us." Larry's driver decided it would be best not to debate. When they got to the hill, Larry began to struggle. Come on, I can do this, he groaned. Then suddenly, there's a loud crack. "Ouch!" cried Larry in pain. His driver quickly applied the brakes. Then he and the fireman got down to inspect what had happened. "That's done it," said the driver severely to Larry. "You've thrown an eccentric rod." "I'm sorry," Larry said sadly. The conductor walked back to Piscataway Station to call for help. An ABA set of F units came to help. They helped Larry to Denville, where Benard took him on to Harmon Works, and the F units took this train down to the seaport. When they got to Harmon, there was more bad news. "I'm sorry, Larry," said the shop's manager, "but we don't have any eccentric rods in stock. Gonna have to order it, I'm afraid." "Oh, that's okay," sighed Larry. With Larry out of action, Mr. Egan contacted the other railroad to see if he could borrow Nia for a while. But there was a problem. "I'm sorry, Mr. Egan," said the other railroad manager, "but Nia's in for repairs herself. But I do have another engine that could cover." The next evening, the new engine arrived. It was a big 484 Northern type locomotive. "Hello," said the engine. "I'm Andy." The other engines responded and introduced themselves. "You must be filling in for Larry," said Christian. "Indeed I am," replied Andy. "What do you do on your railroad?" asked Taylor. "I mostly take coal trains, but sometimes I take general freight and even passengers." "This engine's amazing," said Kyra to Khadijah. "Yeah," agreed Khadijah. "He's a way better engine than Larry." Taylor had heard this exchange and wasn't pleased. Early the next morning, Khadijah was about to depart the yard with a freight train when Taylor puffed up with some hoppers to be loaded with sand for the beaches on her branch line. "I heard what you said about Larry last night," said Taylor sternly. "So what?" Khadijah said nonchalantly. "You're acting like I was telling a lie. Andy may have a bigger boiler and more wheels, but Larry has a lot of heart, and to me, that makes him as good as any big engine." "If you believe that," sniffed Khadijah, "you must have rocks in your boiler. If I were you, I would stay away from the quarry for a couple of days. You see there where that got Larry, didn't you?" Taylor was livid, and before she could reply, Khadijah reached steam and puffed quickly away. Meanwhile, Andy started doing Larry's work. Because he was a bigger engine than Larry, they took advantage of him and added more cars to the trains he was pulling. Andy enjoyed himself. It was nice seeing new scenery and running over new tracks. One particular day, he passed through Harmon as Larry watched from the shops. Khadijah then puffed in with some passenger cars that were due to be repainted. "Who's that?" asked Larry. "Oh, that's Andy," bubbled Khadijah. "He's a bigger, stronger, and faster engine than you." "You couldn't wait to throw that in my spoke box, could you?" asked Larry, rather irritated. "He may even replace you," said Khadijah cheerfully, and she puffed quickly away. Now, I'm not sure if Khadijah meant that last part, or she just said to hurt Larry's nerves. But if it was the latter, it certainly worked. What if she's right? Larry thought to himself. My new rod hasn't even arrived yet. What if Mr. Egan doesn't think I'm worth fixing and decides it's best just to keep Andy? Then he thought about how Dave saved him from being cut up for scrap years ago. Dave wouldn't let me go to scrap. Would he? Of course he wouldn't. But maybe Mr. Egan is going to overrule him. Unfortunately for our friend Larry, what happened next didn't help ease his mind at all. Later that day, Mr. Egan was in his office when the telephone rang. It was the manager of the Andale Paper Company. "Hello, Mr. Egan. We're in a bit of a jam. One of our boilers has failed. Could you spare us one of your steam engines to use for a while until ours is fixed?" "Sure," said Mr. Egan. "You can borrow Larry. He's in the shops waiting for a new eccentric rod. He can still be steamed up." The next day, Larry was surprised to see Amber coupling up to him. "Where are you taking me?" he asked. "To the Andale Paper Company," she replied. "You're going to be using a stationary boiler there." Larry's face went pale. Larry was pushed along the warehouse, where he was fired up and steam hoses were connected to him. Larry had heard stories how steam engines, instead of being scrapped, were used as stationary boilers for factories and then left there to rust. "I guess it's better than scrap," he said to himself. Larry watched his friends puff by pulling trains. They all whistled and said hello to him. Except for Khadijah, who only laughed and said, "I told you so." He even saw Andy pass by, who gave Larry a friendly whistle too. Two days later, Larry realized that he wasn't being steamed up. And then he saw Taylor approaching him. "Hello, Taylor," said Larry sadly. "Come to take me to the scrapyard." "What?" said Taylor. "No, I'm not taking you to the scrapyard. Your new eccentric rod came in. They're going to be repaired." "Oh, yeah, great," Larry said. "Maybe Mr. Egan is just fixing me up so he could sell me off," he said to himself. Every Friday afternoon, Larry takes a coal train down the Montrose branch to Montrose. And since Andy was filling in for Larry, he was sent to do it. Now, the coal train normally isn't that long or that heavy. But Mr. McCormick knew that Andy was going to take the train. So he asked Mr. Egan and Dave if he could add extra cars to it. And they agreed. Andy arrived and coupled up. And with a loud blast of his mighty whistle, he departed. He made his way along the main line and then crossed over to the Montrose branch. The branch line had lighter rails and sharper curves, so he had to reduce his speed. But Andy didn't mind. "It's nice to slow down and take in the scenery," he said to his driver, "but things weren't going to be easy going for long." Near Montrose is a very steep hill. Because of the speed restrictions set on him, Andy couldn't get a good run at it. He strained and struggled against the coal cars. He groaned, "Come on, come on." No matter how hard he tried, it was no use, and Andy stalled halfway up the hill with the heavy coal cars. Larry was in Montrose doing a break-in run after being repaired, so he was sent to help the stranded train. Andy was happy to see Larry. "Hello, Larry. Nice to finally officially meet you." Larry didn't share the same enthusiasm. This is ironic, he said to Andy, me rescuing my replacement. Andy was puzzled by Larry's statement. What the hell are you talking about? Larry told him about what Khadijah had said and what he was thinking. Ignore that talk, huffed Andy. The management and the other engines talk about what a good engine you are, especially that one named Taylor. I actually overheard her telling off Khadijah in the yard the day after I arrived. She has really got your tender. Larry smiled. Good old Taylor. All right, that's enough chatting, said the conductor. Let's get this train on the move. Larry and Andy took up the strain and slowly began to move. You're doing it! You're doing it! Cried Andy. No! Called Larry. We're doing it. You're pulling just as hard as I am. Andy whistled cheerfully as the two engines soldiered on. Soon they were over the top and down the other side. They then made their way back to South Plainsville sheds together, where all the engines cheered for them. Dave and Mr. Egan were there too. Good job, Larry, said Dave. We are very pleased with you. You proved once again why you're a credit to this railroad. Thank you, sir, replied Larry. And, continued Dave, me and Mr. Egan have been talking, and we came to a decision. About what? Larry asked. We decided, said Mr. Egan, that you should have a branch line all to yourself. Larry froze. He couldn't believe what he had heard. Me? My very own branch line? Yes, smiled Dave, if you want it. Oh yes, I most certainly do. Yes, yes, Larry cried. You certainly deserve it, Larry, smiled Taylor. I'm happy for you. Thank you, Taylor, replied Larry with a big smile on his face. And thank you for having my tender. No problem, replied Taylor. That's what I'm here for. Now Larry is as happy as can be. He has a branch line and two coaches named Penny and Kennedy. He puffed backwards and forwards with them all day. He was never lonely. Kevin and Christian stopped by often and talked to him when he's at the junction. And when Taylor doesn't have any jobs on her branch line, she makes sure she comes to see him. Khadijah was jealous at first, but after a while got used to the idea of Larry having a branch line and even agreed that he did deserve it. When she puffs by, instead of giving Larry an angry look, she blows a friendly woo-woo on her whistle, and Larry responds with a